All right, see folks jumping on. Good morning to you. We'll wait as attendees join us here this morning. We want to thank everybody for on such a short notice joining us. I think we have approximately between 225 and 250 people signed up today, so should be a good day and hopefully a conversational day. So I'm going to give it a couple minutes just because we know everybody's kind of getting used to this. We're already up over 100 attendees, but as people are signing in, before we really jump into everything that's going on, I wanted to kind of just preface by saying you can look at the different view options. We've got a panel today, so if you get dizzied by the jumping back and forth of the speaker mode, look and see if you have the gallery option so that you can see all the amazing cool faces that we have here this morning. And so the other piece of this is really that it should be very interactive. That's really our purpose here, is to be very interactive and to engage. I know it looks like a number of you are on, probably about a third, it looks like so far, are on phones. If you want to share your video, I think that's a great thing to do amongst the attendees. In terms of what's there, you have the chat feature. You can see some folks already jumping on. Hi guys, thanks. Be sure to chime in, let us know where you're tuning in from. And then we'll have questions for the panelists today, but I would encourage all attendees to also just jump in on those questions, share your comments, share your questions. You can do that via the chat function. If you have a specific question that you have for us as panelists, there's the Q&A option, and you can even submit those Q&As as anonymous. So that's an option for you if you don't want to sign up, but of course we want to know. This is only going to be as good as the connections that are made. We called it, you know, social connecting, and we meant that. We're all social creatures coming from the association and MLS space, and so having the opportunity to engage, especially as we've all been distanced this past week, I think is really one of the most important parts of this conversation. So definitely chime in. So we're going to get started. We have 5 different panelists, myself included. We've got Mike Valerino, who's a COO in Cleveland. We're joined by Mark Epstein, who's a CEO out in California, kind of in the epicenter of all this. Got Katie Schatz, who's in the more in the middle of the country in Memphis. She's a CEO for her association, as well as has an MLS. And then the hair, or Ryan Conrad, as many of you know him, a CEO from Northern Virginia. So, good morning. How are you guys?
Morning.
Good morning.
So yeah, I think we're pushing about 150 people who have already joined, so that's awesome. And yeah, keep the chats going. As we get started this morning, as I mentioned, really I think this is only going to be as good as the interactions that we create, so definitely use all the different channels to communicate, talk with each other. It doesn't just have to be about us on the video screen. And the other piece about all this is, I think we'll talk about today, is that there's an opportunity here for some grace and some social grace, because we're all learning this new kind of emerging norm of video and what that looks like. And so it's nice to have permission to be imperfect. It's permission to be curious. I think many of us are moving into the childlike state that we haven't probably seen in a while. And then there's this permission not to have all the answers, which is kind of a cool one, because as we all serve in a leadership capacity, it seems like we are always supposed to have all the answers. And so I think today is coming from that place of imperfection and curiosity. We know that there's opportunity here to have some grace. So I'll throw this question out, and again in the chat, if you want to answer this question, I'd be very curious as to what's happening in your worlds as well in the chat feature. But my question is, what's one thing you all did this week that you wouldn't have done otherwise, that really brought value back to you and or your family? And jump in. Ryan, you want to take it?
I guess so. One thing, okay, repeat that question.
What's one thing you did this week you wouldn't have done otherwise because of the situation we're experiencing that brought value back to your life and or your family?
Wow. That's a big question. I mean, I mean, I know this is an association executive panel, but the first thing I think about is my family. And one thing I've noticed right out of the gate is it's brought our family closer together than ever before. I mean, we're pretty close as it is, but you know, right now in the other room, we talk about being imperfect. You know, you may hear a dog bark, you might hear a kid come banging on my office door. That's just the reality we live in. But you know, things like playing board games every night. I mean, my kids right now are at the kitchen table fortunately, my wife is super helpful and patient with them, and she's basically running school for them. So I think that's one thing that's really happened. We're taking walks around the neighborhood. You know, we're coming together. So from a family standpoint, I'd say that's probably the biggest one. From a staffing standpoint and organization standpoint, I think we've also really come together really strongly over the last, few weeks. The key thing we've tried to do is instill a sense of confidence in the organization, in our support for them, in our willingness to try and be flexible. You know, if any of them ever felt uncomfortable coming to work, they have permission to check out. I know you were talking about permissions earlier, Clint, but they had permission to check out, to go home, to not have to report to work, no questions asked. We want everybody to be safe and have a sense of calm and confidence in the organization.
Well, that was so professional of you. How about someone else that actually just, what's the takeaway for you personally? Yeah.
I'll agree with that. Just at home personally, like last night, we've been doing game night, family movie night, and rotating, and it's been just a lot of family time, which is really kind of been a blessing in the middle of all of this. And I would also agree with what Ryan said, from the staff perspective of everyone coming together, and we in contact probably just as regularly as if we were at the office having regular Zoom meetings. And, it's important to see each other. It's important make sure that we don't lose that creativity and collaboration and all the things that we do when we're in the office. And so we've been really trying to stay in touch more regularly than we usually do.
Awesome. Katie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have anything to add. Same here, just doing a lot more video and Zoom meetings with staff and members and trying to get faces out there more than just written content. It's much more about, even if it takes longer, like you said, it's not perfect, just trying to get faces out there versus just words.
What about you, Mark? Anything different? And again, it doesn't have to be work related. Like personally, I know I've found myself doing different things this week than I would have done otherwise, because I would have just been on such lockdown.
Well, I don't know. Do you consider getting up early to get in line to go to the grocery store to get toilet paper or something? That's something everyone's experiencing, food, everyone hoarding. So I think that's kind of just been one of the interesting conversations at night, like who's going to get in line to go to the grocery store. But more than that, I think for my association it was a big deal this week for us closing down our 3 locations and taking our 20 staff working remotely. Definitely a big challenge, a lot of late nights this week, so haven't had a ton of time at home.
Yeah, that's interesting. So kind of my next question related to this is, when did you realize, do you remember the moment where you were at when you realized that this might be something different?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it started early March, but I think the moment where I felt like it was the most serious was when the president addressed the nation on March 11th, that evening. To me, that's when it became real. When the president is in the Oval Office addressing the nation over a crisis, that's when, for me personally, it became really serious. And it was the very next day that we started to take enhanced measures at the office to make sure that the staff was, comfortable with a plan. We mapped out a 30-day kind of contingency plan, started to move everything remotely. I think that was the moment for me. And then, shortly thereafter, a few days later, our governor in Virginia declared a state of emergency, that advised not to have groups gatherings of more than 10 people. And that's when we decided to completely shut down the operations. And when I say operations, I mean the physical location, not our business. We're our message to our members is we're open for business, we're online for business, but the physical locations have been closed.
Yeah, I'm with Ryan. It was the same night, and that was the night that they canceled the NBA. And I was like, whoa, okay, no more basketball? What are you talking about? Now it's personal. So yeah, that definitely hit me that night. And the next morning, we met as a full staff and talked. And I really didn't know what decision I was going to make. It was really in talking with the staff that we decided to close the office completely and work remotely. So we kind of worked through it together and talked about, what things do members come in for? What do they need that they physically have to have us for? And at the end of the day, it was really just lock boxes, not just there are tons of things, but education, but we can figure all of this out, right? But lockboxes was the thing we got a little bit hooked on, and we decided we'll figure that out, but let's go on kind of lockdown and work remotely.
Yeah, I think
You're on mute, Clint.
kind of led the way for us too, and it made kind of the decisions easier. Our governor in Ohio has really been kind of out front of things and really proactive about shutting down gatherings and shutting down schools. I think it was doing that ahead of most states, but even still, when we were getting ready to convene our executive committee to have this conversation about what to do with our operation, 10 minutes before that meeting, a board member walked into my office and said, "This is crazy. Everybody's overreacting." And so, we were dealing with, quite a diverse set of opinions on that. Fortunately, our executive committee was all kind of in line. It's a lot different when you're responsible for a lot of people, and we were all kind of in agreement.
Mark?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Katie. I think it was just when sports started getting canceled, and then we had our governor last night actually just put a stay-at-home order in place for all of California. It's just really eye-opening how big this is actually getting.
Yeah, several of the folks are commenting saying AEI getting canceled. I was in Texas doing some strategic planning work, and it came down that was, everything was locked in. It was so close. It's like, okay, so yeah, this might be different for sure. Like that was, and then it was really different, right? The week when we all kind of get together as association executives, and I think we all kind of look forward to that, and then not being there on top of all the other things that you're dealing with, that definitely settled in quickly.
Yeah, that was an eye opener for sure when AI was canceled. And even, just everything's changing so frequently. I mean, the day on I think it was March 12th, the day after the president addressed the nation, we set up a 30-day plan where basically we postponed or rescheduled events. And our plan at that point was everything's off essentially until April 20th. 3 or 4 days later, all that changed, right? And at this point, everything is really until further notice. And we're just kind of moving everything virtually, all classes, everything else. By the way, there are some comedians making hilarious comments.
Yeah.
Like someone said, I was able to do push-ups at my office. Don't play the Monopoly cheating edition. This stuff is really funny. The humor is amazing. Keep it going.
Yes, please keep it coming. What talk about the messaging, because I've watched some of your messaging over the last week or so, and then one of them this morning specifically, Ryan. But talk about the messaging component, and I know there's the component in terms of messaging out to the general membership, but tell me a little bit about the messaging that you all are sharing with your staff, because we talked about some of the tough decisions and the realities of how this impacts everybody's day-to-day lives. But what's been some of the messaging as a leader of your organization for your staff?
Ryan talked about this, but for me, one of the most important things from the outset was just to let them know that I've got their back. So you're not going to be, punished for being sick. Like no one is asking for this. So we'll support you. I don't know exactly, the first day this came out, it was like, I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'll follow up with you guys and give you, exact guidelines. But from the outset, it was just I don't want that to be on your minds or you to be stressed about that at all. We'll take care of you.
What about others?
I think it's just letting them know that their safety is the biggest concern right now, and that we're doing all this to keep them and our members safe.
Well, it was interesting. I saw some stuff this morning about executives who are having, kind of back and forth with their board in terms of closing the office, and that they shouldn't be doing that, and that the safety concern is not being taken as strongly as others. I thought that was a really interesting piece, especially at this point, as far as advanced as this is, that there's this argument of whether the office should be open and you should have to go in or not.
Yeah, that's real. And that when you think about, not every organization, not every AE has the authority to make those decisions, and that's, especially when you're talking about smaller organizations where maybe it's a one-person staff. So that's real. It's in some cases it's sort of sad, a sad state, but that's real that they're dealing with. I mean, we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of support from our board, our leadership, but at this point, it's such a public. It's part of the community effort And that's one of the things we've been talking about to our members and to our staff, is we're actually doing our part to help the community. It's not just about, you know, our safety, but it's about everybody else's safety too, and stemming the continued growth of the virus. So, you know, we're one of to the staff, what we've been focusing on is really kind of calm, measured, you know, empathetic leadership. So, because we recognize that personally, they're dealing with a lot of challenges with their families, finances, kids, you know, all that stuff, anxiety, you know, this stuff really can take a toll on them. So we're trying to balance that with the need to continue the operation and get them to be supportive of flexibility in the workplace where they can get stuff done and be productive, but also be mindful of they've got to be there for their kids. They've got to be there to support their families and their own mental health. Because without any of that, you know, what else do we have? So we've been really trying to focus on being supportive that way.
Mike, any different messages that you convey to your staff?
Actually, we had a staff meeting yesterday, and we were talking about the same sort of things, the importance of maintaining balance as well in your day-to-day lives. You know, when you're working from home, and this is new to a lot of us to be working from home, where you feel like you're always on, and the importance of, hey, if you still need to take time off, you should still be taking that time off. If you you know, have doctor's appointments and all that sort of thing. I know it's all hands on deck, and you know, we've been tracking our time. We always track our time in Replicon, and Sandy does a great report for our board every year to show them how we spend our staff time, and that's just as important now. I don't know if we'll reach a point. We've been really in line with our board, and our board has been very supportive. But if we ever reach a point where we need to show them what we've been doing since we've been working from home, you know, we have the ability to do that now. And so I don't know if that'll be necessary, but we have that.
What about messaging to your volunteer leaders? And again, you know, in my opinion, you know, association executives should be demonstrating, you know, leadership not only for their staff, but their volunteer leaders, and crafting that together. So what was your messaging to your volunteer leadership, especially those maybe that are closest to you, like your president or your chair? Anyone can jump in on that one. Or did I stump you?
Well, I'll add one thing to kind of what Mike was just saying. Yesterday, we did a Zoom with the full staff, and we took a screenshot of this, like all of our kind of Brady Bunch heads in you know, a square, and posted it on social media and sent it to kind of our leadership team, just to be like, hey, you know, just so you can see our faces and really understand that we are still, you know, here working. So that was kind of fun, but we've been doing, like I said, a lot more video and trying to put our faces out there more than ever. So I meet with my president every week anyway, but we're meeting like twice a week, and we do a Zoom now so we can see each other and just connect that way, because it's so important right now to really be able to connect, not just talking. Like, we need to see each other physically, and not just my current team, but like my president from last year, we talked the other day too, because it's like all the members are kind of missing seeing us, and past leadership is feeling a little disconnected too. So I've got my team trying to reach out to committee chairman and somebody on the board, or just even a member, like every day. Like, let's try to touch somebody every day, whether it's a phone call or a video chat, to try to connect with them.
Anyone else, different messaging? Because again, you're setting tone not only internally for staff and the key volunteers, but then you at some point need to externalize that, right, to the general membership and subscribers.
Well, the key thing that we've been focusing on is regular and even kind of over the top amount of communication. You know, like we're from a staffing standpoint, kind of going back for a second, one of the things we've been talking about is, you know, we're not kicking back, you know, we're really, this is a time to kick in, you know, and we're really kind of moving forward. We're looking up and out, we're not down and back. And so the staff has been great with that. And so we're trying to get communication out. Are you guys getting feedback from me talking, or is it just, okay. We're trying to get communications out as regular as possible. At a minimum, we're trying to send a daily message to our board of directors at the end of the day with kind of what's going on. an email. We're doing 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 emails to our members every day. We're on social media trying to get the message out. And there's some practical questions that I see on the side here that maybe we probably want to try to address, things like, how are you monitoring staff's performance while they're out of the office, and how are you forwarding phone calls? I know from our standpoint, we've been able to basically forward every direct phone line to a staff person's cell phone. And so it's as if they're at their desk. And now in light of that, what we've done is offer a stipend to our staff for their cell phone and their home Wi-Fi to say, okay, we acknowledge you're going to be using your personal equipment. We want to help offset that expense, because our expectation is you'll be able to answer those phone calls and be responsive within the same business day. You're going to be using your personal Wi-Fi, so we want to help provide a stipend. Not every association will be able to do that, but it's something to consider so that they have the confidence and support from the organization.
Mike or Mark, anything different in terms of the communications, the collaboration with your leadership?
No, I think it's just a regular basis. I mean, I talk to my president almost daily on what's going on in our officers and our leadership. And I think just taking people to the Zoom meetings have been really cool and eye-opening, letting people know how easy it is to use this type of technology to communicate. I think with regard to like our association, what we did to go remote, we have a phone system that's cloud-based. So we were able to, each staff take their phone home, plug it into their router, and take calls just as normal. So that's been an easy transition for us.
Yeah, we use a cloud phone service, so that's been really easy. We all have the soft phones on our cell phones anyway, as far as handling the phone calls. And our messages with our volunteers have really been along the lines of, hey, we're open for business. Just because we're closing the office, like Ryan said, just because we're closing the office doesn't mean anything is slowing down as far as the operation. All of our committees and work groups are still meeting. We're all learning Zoom. I think we've gotten more use out of it than we ever have before, and it's been great. I mean, for this to happen in these times when we have the technology to be able to forge ahead and continue business, has been great.
I do want to talk about the oh, go ahead.
No, we use a theme, just we're here for you. We're here for you 6 days a week. We're still doing everything we normally do. We just don't have our 3 offices open, but our staff is still here to serve you.
The Beatles would have been there 8 days a week, just throwing that out there. We're going to talk some practical stuff in terms of Zoom versus this, and then I know we're getting some questions, and keep the comments in the chat going. You guys are very interesting stuff just going in the chat feature, so keep those going. If you do have questions for the panelists, directly use the Q&A feature, and that'll get it right in front of us so that we can address that for you. But before we move off of this, again, talking about this new norm, we're all getting used to video, but we're also getting used to working remotely. So in terms of yourself first, but also staff, what are you doing in terms of creating that accountability that, yes, we are still working, we've got all these new things that are going on, we've got a lot of distractions, but at the end of the day, if we're going to promise to be there for our members and subscribers, we have to deliver on that. And so maybe talk about it from how you're doing that personally first, and we could talk about the aspect of staff.
Well, I think for just, personally, I mean, we were able to use Zoom meetings for our staff. There's also a program called Slack that we're just starting to implement for our employees to be able to communicate regularly. But I think for us is our phone system, we're able to track the number of calls that people are taking in every day, and we're tracking the productivity. So we've let our staff know, hey, this isn't time to catch up on your Netflix watch list, wish list. This is time to work and be productive. So we're able to monitor that to tracking the interaction and how many calls they're actually taking.
How do you keep yourself accountable? I mean, that's the staff piece, right? Like, but for you personally, what's keeping you motivated? What's keeping you focused, Mark?
I think it's just showing our members that we can still serve them and still do what we do best in spite of this challenge.
Well, to me, there's also some basic things like, reiterating just, you've got to be available between the hours of 8:30 and 5. You have to, schedule yourself for lunch break. We know we're flexible. We know there's going to be times you're going to have to take care of your family. That's fine. Let us know about it. Stay in touch with your supervisor or your team. We use Microsoft Teams, and it's worked really well. The chat function, you can put a team together and do a video conference pretty quickly. And Fortunately, we got our entire team on that back in the fall, so it's made for a very seamless communication. But I'm really curious about, Mark, your system that you have, this plug and play system with the phones. The only challenge I see right now is, unfortunately, some of us has caught us on our heels. I don't know we're in a position right now to start making wholesale changes to the way we, do these kind of things. We have to kind of work with what we have, but we need to be ready to move forward and pick up new things like Zoom, for instance. We had our first board of directors meeting yesterday entirely virtually. We use GoToWebinar, and it was seamless. It was great, but Zoom seems fantastic. And this is a system where I've already talked to our staff team yesterday, like, hey, we need to really look at that. And if that's a new direction we need to go in, then fine. This is a time, green light to go do these things. We're looking at implementing a chatbot feature on our webpage. We've been thinking about that for a while, but now we're going to go for it so that members have another way to communicate with us on our website that connects directly to our team. So being nimble, being flexible is all part of this.
Anyone else, the accountability piece, ensuring that staff, as well as yourselves are sticking to, while there's so many distractions in the world, staying focused and delivering on what it is we need to do day in and day out?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know about you guys, but I am so busy these days between just normal, operations and then trying to quickly get up to speed with things like Zoom and, other, just trying to figure out ways for us all to work well in this new environment, researching new things. And as things pop up, like, okay, as we change dates for events, like how does that affect the election? So we've got to research, we can't move the date too far because it affects the timing and the bylaws and things like that. All kinds of things are coming up that are on top of just the regular business kind of day-to-day stuff. So I'm having no trouble staying accountable personally because I'm pedaling as fast and hard as I can every day. And I feel like staff is really, we kind of made an early decision when we closed the office completely. We were a little bit ahead of others who weren't working remotely yet. And so I think the staff really respected that decision and put a lot of value in it. And so they've been really respectful in turn about working from home and being able to work remotely. And I think they're just really being respectful of being able to do that. So.
I just noticed some questions in the chat about what specifically we're using, and we're using Ring Central. We've had Ring Central for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, and actually in the process of switching over to another phone service from Momentum. We're kind of pushing that to September now, and we use Office 365. We just spun up Teams this week, yesterday actually, and starting to utilize that. The chat feature is going to be really helpful, I think.
Mark, so I think a couple of folks had asked, so kind of walk us through some of your technical aspects and maybe even give us a little bit of background on this. Isn't something that's new to you. You've been working with remote offices for some time, and so you have some background. This isn't as new maybe to you as it is to others, but yeah, if you could talk about kind of the background as well as some of the systems you're using.
So we use a company called BroadVoice, and each of the phones are Yealink phones. Everything's cloud-based, so we're able to take the phones and take them anywhere, plug them into internet, and they function straight into our call center and queues and different things like that. I think for us, as we started opening more locations and went from just a headquarters to adding 2 more locations, we really wanted a plug-and-play option that can just plug in a phone into to another location and have it function and have it be seamless, as well as starting to have a couple people telecommute. Again, they could take that home. Back before any of this ever happened, we had some staff telecommuting, and it was just a great option. So it's BroadVoice, and is the name of the company, and the phones we use are Yealink phones. They're pretty cool phones, actually.
Anyone else, I mean, anything outside of the norm that people wouldn't have heard of, or different approaches from the technical standpoint, whether it be the video or the phone communications, the team, the Slacks, what are the tools that you're leveraging right now?
We're doing Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and we had just thankfully switched to Raptoni Cloud. So, and our Microsoft Office stuff is on the cloud, so everything's really pretty accessible. I have a question that maybe you can add to your list, Clint, that you can ask later, but I'm curious if anyone else has thought about offering staff the option to work remotely in the future. Now that we've all practiced it and had it, it occurs to me that it would be a nice thing for staff to be able to do, maybe on, I don't know, I haven't given it too much thought because I'm way too busy right now, but you know, maybe on a rotating basis or once a week, they get to choose a day that they work remotely, just for maybe a later, you know, question.
No, I say go for it now. Anyone got responses to it? I mean, I'm of the opinion that what's happening now in terms of the remote, the video conferencing, and we'll talk about it in terms of event delivery and education delivery here in a little bit, because we are getting some comments about that. But my thought is that even if things go back to a norm within the next couple of weeks, that we're seeing a huge shift to a video, remote, you know, electronic environment, and that this is going to create to some degree an emerging norm, you know, for us all. So I think it's a legitimate question that you're asking, and one that, you know, we should be doing in, you know, lockstep with dealing with the immediate as well, right? So that we're not just so caught up in the now that we forget that we've got to continue to do that contingency planning out into the future. But what are other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is changing the way that people work, and it's going to. This is, whether it's, you know, it's just going to go on for another month or two, you know, it's going to happen again. And, you know, it could be, we don't know how long this is going to be, but we're all having to adjust the way that we work now. And I think some of these adjustments are going to be more permanent than maybe we considered.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is going to shift the dynamic. I mean, what we're proving right now, what we're going to be proving over the next couple of weeks and months, is that so much of what we do in associations can be done remotely. The only sort of physical, I'd say physical requirements from an association standpoint that we've identified primarily is dealing with lock boxes. And in the short run, our plan is to have a short window of open hours on Fridays, because that's the highest traffic day that we get for lock boxes heading into the weekend, where for 2 hours by appointment only, it'll be drive-up service. They pull into our garage, our staff will come out with gloves. We've got these protocols in place, and they'll help fix whatever lockbox challenge they have, or sell a lockbox, and then they'll be on their way. And if we need to expand those office hours, we'll look at doing that. We'll try to be mindful. But that's probably one of the only physical requirements. And then the other one is continuing education. And a lot of the states, we're finding the regulatory boards are now loosening their regulations to allow for what were only approved as in-class approved CE to allow to do virtual. So we're moving in that direction. There's still some nuances around that about how that can be done, but you know, that's a direction we're going in, and our instructors are on board with doing that. So one of the other kind of member benefits and things we've been thinking about is, if we're trying to discourage members from having to come physically, we're encouraging them to go online, to go on our Realtor, Shop Realtor website. They can get everything they need there digitally and order products from our store. We're waiving shipping fees. You know, we're not charging them shipping. Now that does mean we're going to have staff come into the office probably about once a week, and we'll see how the flow goes to actually get the shipping out. But we're waiving the shipping. We're trying to do things that meet their needs, and that's kind of takes us back, you know, kind of to an earlier point. You know, one of the things we need to really be focusing on is the impact this is having on our members' livelihoods. I mean, they're scrambling right now. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for guidance. They're looking to the associations as that stable voice, that stable resource. And we're always trying to keep that in mind, because, you know, this is going to affect whether or not they get paid, whether they go to closing, you know, whether their clients, you know, get wet feet and they don't, or cold feet and they don't want to have an open house, things like that. So it's a lot to be considering, and we're just doing the best we can.
Anyone else, anything to add on that one in terms of the longer term impacts?
No, I think just if our staff's going to want to come back to work after all this.
Right. Mark, while you're up, I may jump right to you. So a lot of folks are immediately transitioning, education and events to a video format. I saw earlier Deb commented from Illinois that they did their awards, event yesterday via Zoom, and everybody loved it. But again, you've been doing remote and online event planning and delivery now the last couple of years. You actually have and maybe you can explain it. I think it's a spin-off to some degree of your association where you have an events, online events company that does production scale, where you've done as big as 156 associations around the country with one event. Am I correct in my facts?
Yeah, so in February of last year, we started a company called REevents. The purpose of REevents is really so we can help share what we're doing education-wise with other associations that are smaller and may not have the same resources. So we have a full production facility with 4 cameras, a really high-end TriCaster news production type of broadcasting system. And we're able to just put tons of events out there and keep costs down for other neighborhood associations. We partnered with Lee Brown last year in June, and we broadcast and helped her produce National Ethics Day. We were in over 160 associations in 23 states for all those that participated in that. That was live from our CVAR stage. I think that our goal is that not only can we make some non-dues revenue, but we could bring education events to other associations that don't have the resources that I have for a very small fee. They can still charge, their attendees a registration fee. They can still get sponsors. And by us doing this, we can help create non-dues revenue for these other associations. So it's been really successful so far. We've done other events like Safety Day last year. We did Safety Day in California. We had 15 associations. We spent $1,200 on speakers between, FBI special agents, different things like that. And we were able to, again, let other associations make money off of it by partnering with us. We also have the Real Estate Revive conference that we do every year. This year, that's in 4 states. It was originally scheduled for yesterday, but we are postponing right now to a later date when things start to settle down. And our whole focus for Revive is going to be reviving from crisis. So every speaker will be really discussing now what's next. So we're really looking forward to doing that as soon as this starts to turn.
What's everybody else been experiencing in terms of, converting events? And I think education has been the more immediate response in terms of converting them to online and mobile opportunities. What's everybody's experience been with that so far?
We've kind of had our hands tied a little bit by what the Tennessee Real Estate Commission, they were not making a quick decision. They finally today decided that they would change the rules about distance learning so people can renew their licenses, at least in the meantime. So we were kind of waiting for them to make a decision, because where it stood before, we weren't able to do anything that was already approved to be live. We couldn't change that. So it couldn't be changed to be online learning now. So I'm happy to hear that they've made that decision. It was either last night or this morning. So that helps us out a lot. But we're definitely looking at, we had it in our strategic plan to put cameras and do all the things that Mark's talking about in our education center, but we weren't there yet. So unfortunately, like Ryan said before about something else, we were kind of caught on our heels with that, but we're going to be quickly moving toward getting set up to be able to offer learning online or through webinars or whatever, and getting it approved through Truck that way.
We had similar challenges with the Ohio Division of Real Estate. Their process for online education is totally different than for live. So we really had to just cancel classes that we had scheduled. I believe we canceled through the end of May. And now we're working with them on what we need to do to be able to offer education through Zoom or another platform online. In terms of events, we had our biggest RPAC fundraiser, our RPAC auction was scheduled for March 26th. And so the day last week when our executive committee made the decision to close the office and cancel classes, they also made the decision to take that event to an online only auction. And our work group was coming in right after, I think they met an hour after our executive committee. And so we had to tell them, break the news to them. And I don't think anybody was surprised, but I think they were a little overwhelmed with everything that would be involved with transforming this event that was all ready to go. You know, it was a banquet style auction, you know, and everything that needs to be done to transition that to an online event. But I think we're going to be ready to roll with that, and it's going to turn out great.
I know we're getting some questions about specific things related to MLS, and I will say today's panelists, I didn't load us with a group of panelists that have a lot of that day-to-day component in terms of the MLS. So we'll likely be looking at another one of these in the future where we can really drill down into some of the MLS issues, because those are very different than what we're talking about here. But I think we wanted to keep today more at that higher level in terms of, you know, what are we all experiencing collectively, whether running an association or MLS, and from an organizational standpoint. So Nancy, appreciate the question, but I don't know if we'll dig into that. I did see a question from Chris Carrillo as well about the infrastructure component, right? So if all these changes are going to happen, we're going to do big events and we're going to do all these things, you know, there has to be the infrastructure component. So is anyone else, you know, bumping up against any infrastructure challenges? I mean, all of you are in fairly large communities, but we have some folks in some outlying areas where, again, this infrastructure, the capacity just for video, you know, and what it eats up, you know, any of those issues that you're starting to see emerge? Because everybody's clamoring for this. It's not just our industry, right? It's everyone. Everyone's home doing happy hours, and but video is a big, you know, data eater. So any challenges there in terms of infrastructure and capacity?
We initially just, you know, like I said, we kind of started working remotely last Friday, and so we were a little bit ahead of some other people, but we out of the gate started using freeconferencecall.com as kind of just a patch until we got Zoom set up and really started diving into Teams more. But we were finding that when people were calling, they were getting a busy signal or they were getting bumped off of calls. And we got an email from freeconferencecall.com like earlier this week saying they're just overloaded and completely inundated by the amount of people. So exactly what you're talking about, Clint. And I've wondered that, and I hope I'm not being doomsday or anything, but I feel like as this progresses over the next month or so, I truly think we could break the internet, like all of us, because everyone's working from home and using VPNs and like lives, you know, people who are not working are like watching Netflix all day and whatever. Like, I mean, is there gonna become an issue with that where we can't handle the bandwidth? I don't know.
Great, we broke the internet. Way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it really might happen this time, guys.
We haven't. The challenge we had the other day, 2 days ago, as we were really fully prepping for an entirely remote setup with our staff team, was our phone lines went down for the entire day. And it was some kind of server issue, and it was interesting. We dealt with it, we got through it, but it just shows you how vulnerable you really are. I mean, if the internet goes down, all of what we're talking about is meaningless and is basically impossible. So I don't know, it could definitely be a challenge. So, you know, we're talking about how things are changing so quickly. I just got an alert on my phone that says the governor of New York has just issued an executive order mandating that 100% of New York's workforce must stay home, excluding some essential services. But I mean, that could be coming to any one of our states at any point. Some of you probably already experiencing that. Mark, probably in California, I think there's something similar. You know, that's going to force our hands in so many ways and really affect the economy and our members' businesses. It's, you know, there's so much happening right now.
Mark, any thoughts on that? You may be, again, here another example of where you all are ahead of the curve in terms of the you know, full shutdown type of capacities.
Yeah, I think what took place yesterday with the governor of California with the stay-at-home order really said that any non-essential business needed to close, and that really falls into all associations. So I think in California, if you're an association and you're open, you need to have a plan pretty quick. Because the orders yesterday mean that we really need to close our doors and figure out other ways that we can serve our members right now.
And also realtors, right? Like that means they can't work. So, yeah.
Katie, you do have an MLS, and so what's the difference in terms of, I know you've got some folks that are in the day-to-day, but how are the conversations different around MLS related decisions than the association?
Yeah, I mean, really with MLS, it's more had to do with policy stuff, like our rules and regs, and trying to figure out if there's anything. We were just about to implement a coming soon policy locally, separate from the NAR rule. But so it's like, well, okay, so, but does that change now? Because things, it has to be in the MLS within a certain amount of days and blah, blah, blah. And my take on it was, instead of changing that rule that has just gone out, we need to have a blanket for the entire MLS rules and regs that says, okay, right now, these certain things, these specific things are not being enforced or are being waived or whatever the deal is, because it's not business as usual. As we know, like, members are out there showing property and listing property, but things are going to change, and it's changing quickly. And so our rules need to reflect the same thing. So it's really been like on the rules and regs side. And then for us, our MLS side manages our lock boxes. So that's been, as we kind of talked about earlier, one of the biggest things on the association side for a lot of people is how to handle lock boxes. Like, are you able to sell them right now? If you are, do you have required training for people who are new members who get lock boxes? We do. And so we have a training requirement for that. So figuring out a way to deliver that training in a virtual way so that they can get a lock box and start using it right away.
I could share some perspective on from an MLS standpoint. We're part of the Bright MLS footprint, where our association is the largest shareholder of Bright MLS, and just this morning they released to our subscribers a couple of basically what they're doing is being flexible and implementing some temporary changes, nothing permanent, and things are evolving daily. But for example, they're relaxing the showing requirements for active listings. So in other words, saying, you don't have to allow an in-person showing where before you do. You have to allow showings. They're being flexible on that. And don't quote me on the details here, but I'm just giving you a concept. So I don't want to misspeak on behalf of Bright MLS. They're also updating some of their virtual tour rules. There's a lot of MLSs have pretty tight requirements about if a virtual tour can be branded, if it can be included in the agent remarks versus the public remarks that go out to the portals and to the IDX feeds. And then they're also allowing for agent in the agent remarks, like a blanket sort of authorization that the buyer's agent can take pictures of a property so that they can show them to their clients. So something to that effect. So there are definitely a lot of moves happening. One of the discussions that I hear across the industry is, do we do something with days on market in this market? Are sellers going to be concerned and want to pull their listings? If agents put the listing into temporary off the market situation, is that good for the industry? Would pausing DOM be an issue? And it's really, there's both two sides to that issue, and it's controversial, but that's another discussion I've heard crop up as well across the MLS world.
Yeah, and I think those are big discussions. Like I said, I think I want to do a follow-up where we can really dive into some of the MLS related. Maybe I'm going to touch just quickly back on the events and education piece, and then I want to kind of wrap up here as we're getting close to an hour in terms of the overall impact with shutdowns and fees and all the questions that are coming. But going back to the events and the education, and I think, Mark, you have some insights on this, but it becomes really important that we do not just flip the switch and turn on education and events without thinking through how to really create engaging online offerings, right? Because what we don't want to do is get so quick to go to market on these things that we deliver these terrible education experiences that we hear about in person. If we exacerbate that online, we could really compromise our ability to engage members moving forward if we move into more of an environment like this. So really being thoughtful about how education is delivered. Not every instructor is going to be great at a monologue type of situation where you're just talking into a camera and you've got to retain an audience. So there's some coaching and some thought and some kind of strategy that has to go into your event and education delivery when we move into an online delivery. And at least that's my experience.
So that was one of the big things we took into consideration with REevents as we started doing some of these events. You've got to engage the people that are listening and watching. Otherwise, they feel completely disconnected. So we have an app. We have the REevents app. We have the Revive app. And this app has been so important because as speakers ask questions, people are actually interacting with the app live. They can vote up their questions. Other people can say, hey, wow, I was thinking that. Vote that question up. We can do live polling, so speakers can literally live poll people and across the country. Everyone's seeing real-time answers. So if you haven't thought about an app and you're looking at doing some more online education like this, definitely consider that app.
Anyone else doing anything to not only set expectations for those who are watching, but those who are delivering the education in terms of how they get that engagement, and they don't just become a monologue, talking head on a screen that we hear about all the time with online education prior. It's like people are checked out, they're just checking boxes to get CE, and I don't think that we want to proliferate that by not being thoughtful about our delivery.
Well, even through like GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting, there's interactive tools within it. So it's still very new to our instructors, and we're doing some teaching to them on how to use it. But the things like Mark is talking about, active polling, so you can make sure that everyone's paying attention, they're asking questions. You can put them on the spot and say, okay, we can't move on until everybody's answered this question. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use to make sure you're engaging. And even something like Zoom, if you have video, at least there's more of like a face-to-face interaction. And then, the regulatory authorities, like in Virginia, they have pretty strict requirements about what can be approved as a virtual class. And it defines, it says things like, you've got to be able to see and interact and monitor the students, make sure that they're attending. So that forces us to have to use software that can actually do all those things. When we're done with this, I want to ask a question in the panel about something separate, if you don't mind, Clint.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just quickly, Mark, we're getting a lot of questions about the app name, and maybe they can just reach out to you via your company and get some details that way. What is that? Just
Mark at REevents.live. I can tell you more about it. The app that we use is through a company called All in the Loop. We interviewed 8 or 9 different companies checking out different apps, and we found this All in the Loop, which was fantastic. And then the final selling piece was we found out later that they also do the AEI app. So just a great company, great to work with, All in the Loop. You can also chat with Courtney Wilson. She'll tell you all about them too.
Awesome. Ryan, go ahead.
There is a resource real quick before I ask the question, and I'm trying to find it, but Miami Realtors just released a completely virtual online course or software or programming, and I want to say it's like MiamiRealtorsLive.com, something like that. But if you reach out to Teresa Kinney or her team, I'm sure they'd be happy to share it with you what that's all about. We got a preview of it actually like over a year ago, and the timing of releasing it was perfect. But my question to all of you, and one of these questions came out in the chat is, what about RPAC right now? So, it's such a delicate time in our members' lives with making money and being concerned about their livelihoods, and at the same time, our regulatory and legislative and political advocacy is so important. As you see things coming out of Congress, you see us working to make sure that our court clerks are all open and working with, making sure that things operate, and our local governments. How do you actively RPAC fundraise in an environment like this? Are you, if you are, what are you doing? Obviously we can do online, but what's just general thoughts about raising RPAC dollars in this circumstance right now?
That's a good question. We haven't even gotten there yet. We had a call the other day, earlier this week though, about an RPAC fundraiser that we do usually in the summer. So just talking about, planning for that. So we're hoping that we'll still be able to have, our live events that we had before. But I think you make a good point about, with everything that's happening in the world, I think it's even in a way an easier sell, but I mean, we're already bought into RPAC, but to me, it's an easier sell to talk to the members about, hey, these are the ways that it impacts our business. And when something horrible like this happens and unprecedented, when we can come to the table instantly, like we did in Tennessee with our legislators and say, hey, you need to help us be able to help consumers still buy homes during this unprecedented time. And they've included that in the emergency, declaration and everything. I think that's just another win that we can talk about when we are trying to sell RPAC.
Anyone else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that our goals are certainly all going to be affected. You know, when we talked about our event or changing the format of our event, we're doing so realizing that we might not raise as much as we had planned to, but this was sort of the move that we need to make. At some point, though, we need to get back to back to our fundraising. And like Katie said, I think what's happening now is really going to kind of prove a lot of our points that we're trying to make when we're selling the RPAC investment, and the value that it brings back to our members. But temporarily, I am concerned about what does that mean for this upcoming election, and that we're going to have on it compared to previous elections.
So can I chime in as the recovering association executive, now consultant? So here's my thought, and what I'm advising a lot of my clients to do in terms of this is, I think now is the time to become a thought leader as much as it is a collection of donations. And I say that in this way. If we go out and we spend a lot of our time trying to catch up or figure out the nuance of raising funds, instead of right now under a time of duress, assuming a leadership role, being proactive about defining what we think would create industry resilience, I think we're missing a huge opportunity, because this is the chance to demonstrate the value through action, not asking for more. I think it's the time to give back, to do better. And there's going to be a lot of funding. I saw this morning ASAE is asking for, I think, 25 million or something like that to help with associations. And I think the easy answer in a lot of these situations is just to say, let's get in line for the handout. My thought process is now is the time as a thought leader to be developing and working with our volunteer leaders to create solutions that aren't just let's get in line for a handout, but rather what would really truly stabilize the industry as a whole, not only for our members, but for homeowners, for renters, and look at this, the commercial component. To me, it's a time for leadership. And then if you're able to demonstrate leadership, move government into a direction that does things that are good for the industry as a whole long-term, your fundraising opportunities down the road are going to be exponential, because now you can point to your victories, how you really changed and moved the momentum around the industry during a time of duress. So to me, it's time to show, not ask. And that's where I'm really advising folks to be proactive, really strategic and aggressive about their advocacy related items right now.
I think that was really well said. And it's something that I'm glad we're kind of addressing towards the end here, is that there's really a profound opportunity for every association executive and every association to lead and to be part of the industry solutions. I mean, we said it earlier, but our members are looking to us, realtors are looking to us, the community is looking to us, government officials are looking to us to be the stable, reassuring, credible voice for real estate. This is a great time to do that. We're getting calls from the media all the time asking for reactions and asking for, what's happening, what are you seeing? So be the resource. We're bringing together our strategic partners and industry experts like our lenders and our title agents and our economists and professors. We're bringing them all together and trying to be a good resource, bring people together that maybe our members can't bring together, or big brokers can't bring together, whatever it is, and getting that information out. So I think it's a great point, Clint.
Yeah, it's a perfect time to build alliances, because what we're looking at are really, in my opinion, are windows of decision making, right? And our volunteer leaders, the industry as whole, or our industry partners are going to be more open to making tough and swift decisions under these circumstances. And I would rather be leading that charge and working with others collaboratively in a proactive way rather than in a reactive way. I'm not going to sit around and wait for, government agencies to define how the industry is going to be best protected. I think through coalition building, we could do a much better job of that. And so I want to close on that. And by the way, a reminder, everyone, we are recording this. We'll send this back out, and so it'll be made available. But I want to talk about that decision-making window. So if we do have this decision-making window, there's some urgency and some opportunity to do great things here. How do we take advantage of that in the best way possible? And it gets back to that demonstrating leadership piece that you just talked about, Ryan.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answers. I think a lot of us are struggling with that, but I think what you have to do is make a decision, right? Like you said before at the very outset, this is about giving each other grace, and sometimes we're going to make a mistake in all this because it's uncharted waters for absolutely everyone on the planet right now, right? So, but I think it's important to make decisions. So I've, you know, found myself at times spending maybe too much time trying to research something or wanting to be perfect. And then it's like, you know what, good is good for now. Like, let's make a decision. If it doesn't work, then we can pivot. In terms of like using Zoom as the platform versus GoToMeeting or whatever. So certain things, you know, I think you just need to have the confidence to make a decision, consult with everybody else in our community. There's a lot of smart people out there, so get some good support from others in our community and from your staff, and, you know, bounce things off your leadership team too. And just, you know, move forward, but be willing to say, okay, this isn't working, let's try something else.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that I try to share with our team too. It's never let the pursuit of perfection hinder progress. You know, you take risks, and this is the time to do that. It's almost like a blank slate for so many of us. I use that example for with AEI, and I feel so, you know, terrible for Jim Hasler, you know, and the AEI team who worked so hard to put together the programming to have it canceled. But it's also now a great opportunity, and, you know, an opportunity to try different things. Know that you potentially could fail, you're taking risks, but you know, you've got to try, and being decisive with those opportunities is really critical as a leader right now.
Mark, what do you want to add to that?
No, it's I think they just hit the nail on the head. Both you guys hit everything. You got it.
Mike, anything else on your end?
No, that was a great point, both Katie and Ryan. You know, we want to look at this as an opportunity. I know there's no roadmap for this, and you've got to allow yourself some margin for error, and for your organizations some room for error. But you know, we're creating the roadmap as we go.
Awesome. Well, thanks to all the attendees. There's been great chat. If you just looking back on the chat, you could have learned so much outside of what was shared here amongst the group. And that's exactly the connections piece was exactly what we were wanting. So for those that are still on, if you would like to connect with others, I know I saw Nick's connected with a bunch of people on Facebook already. Go ahead and reach out, meet someone that you hadn't talked to before. And I do think there is a unique opportunity here where oftentimes the association is an afterthought in the brokerage community, within even our affiliate members, the general membership, and the collective nature and need during times of duress elevates the association's value proposition. And for me, because I spend so much time talking about the association versus the MLS and how they interrelate to each other, I think this is the perfect time to be really truly assessing the value of the association beyond MLS. This speaks to that opportunity to provide leadership within the community and to separate from the day-to-day value of the tool that the MLS is to demonstrate still the collective need of the association space. And so I hope we all do take that window of opportunity, the window of decision-making, to do things that move in a more quickly and thoughtful and strategic way than maybe we do on an ongoing basis. And so that's back to your point, Ryan, of taking a chance to do something innovative when there's a willingness to kind of fail forward. Katie?
Yeah, I just want to say this has been so therapeutic for me to see your faces and all the comments popping up, and seeing so many friends, like names popping up. And it's just, I think we all kind of needed this, just like our staff needs us right now and our members need us. So thank you. This is the first opportunity I've been given to connect with my colleagues. So I really appreciate you setting this up, Clint. And thank you so much to everybody who's on here. Hi, everybody. I miss you guys. Can't wait to see you soon.
Yeah, the connections piece, again, we're all pretty social people by nature. I mean, being in an association with big personality types like we are, I mean, you tell us to go be reclusive and all of a sudden it starts to. So when are we doing the happy hour though? This was, there was a lot of.
I know, virtual happy hour. When is this happening?
we did one in my house last night, and it was really enjoyable. And again, that was one thing that I wouldn't have done otherwise, and connected with 3 or 4 people that I wouldn't have connected with otherwise. So hopefully it's you know, I'm a cancer survivor, so I'm always looking at the things that seem to be the worst as the greatest opportunity. And I think there's so much to learn from this, to focus forward, to be positive, and to find ways to excel rather than recoil. So maybe
hey, I know,
is getting together.
I know we're over time here, but what you just said brought up something like a personal, but I think is relevant that we're kind of getting to here is, so my birthday's coming up, and
yes,
it's a big birthday. so my wife worked really hard to secretly invite some of my old high school friends and college friends to come stay at my house in 2 weekends from now. And obviously this all is falling apart. She had to break the news to me tonight that this couldn't happen. But we are going to do a virtual kind of get together on Saturday night. It's gonna be awesome. So, you know, it's you know, this stuff is affecting our personal lives in so many ways. So anyway, thanks, Clint. This was awesome.
Yeah, everybody's gonna have to learn this video etiquette thing. I will say there were awkward moments in our after hours yesterday. So there are gonna be awkward moments. One thing I will say closing, like, look at your backgrounds. I mean, again, obviously we're focused here, but if we're gonna deliver professional, or we're gonna have a setting where we're more conversational, think about the environment that you're creating when you're on the video. I think that's really important. And so, yeah, it's cool. It's a unique world.
You don't like my pictures?
They're very nice. I liked Mike's pool table or whatever.
I know. I want to see you play shuffleboard, Mike.
Is that not professional?
Next time we got to get the band together, Mike. Mike, you play the drums, I'll play guitar, you know. Clint, you can sing.
Are you seeing the artists, like a lot of artists that like,
yeah.
Again, this is hitting them. Talk about just cutting legs out from under. I saw an artist that's selling his drums because they can't tour, but they're taking the online. Bands in Town is now doing virtual concerts. So this thing is going to shift so many industries to that video and interactive and remote platform. It'll be very intriguing to see. This is going to change what we know as humans for a long time to come. Yeah, cool. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all. Thank you for taking the time. I'll let you get back to your busy lives, but we appreciate you sharing with us. And again, for those that tuned in, thanks for everything. Thanks for all the connections, all the connectivity, and we'll likely look at doing more of these so that we can get together again.
Cool. Thanks, Clint.
Thanks, Clint.
Thanks, Clint.
Bye, guys.
Great. Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Clint.
Well,
Thank
Good
you.
seeing you.
Bye-bye.